again on this rather dreary morning from the Staffordshire and Worcestershire Canal. Firstly, I'd like to start by apologising for the lack of uploads recently. I had major problems with my Wi-Fi, which hopefully is now resolved, and I also had quite a lot of problems after that with my camera equipment, which didn't help either. So hopefully all is resolved now, and hopefully I'll be able to post a bit more frequently from now on.
I think some kids may have had a bit of fun here, emptying a bottle of washing up liquid into the lock. At least my hull will get clean. Time to moor up. Get that fire going. Anyone know of a cure for boater's sock? All that pushing back on lock gates and pulling the boat in, that's what does it.
So the news since I posted last, which was the Harecastle Tunnel upload, was that I went on the Haugen Canal with my family and spent some quality time on the Haugen, which is fantastic, but I didn't actually film anything just because I wanted to spend time with my family. But just the upper reaches of the Haugen are absolutely stunning, and it's a place I will definitely revisit and film next year sometime. Yeah, and the other thing that's happened is that whilst I was in Stone, I buddied up with another boater. It was about 2.5 weeks ago or something. So we've been travelling around together since, helping one another through locks, which makes life an awful lot easier, I have to say. And it's also nice to have some company in the evenings. Well, it looks as though we're just pulling up to Deptford Lock now, so I'm just going to slow down and let Linda prepare the lock for me, and I'll go through first and then prepare the lock for her so that she can go through. So both successfully through. We're leaving Detmoor Lock behind us. Next lock up is Tixall Lock, I believe, which is a good few miles from here. So a nice easy cruise between here and there. And I've got to say, even though it's kind of really grey this morning, it's really quite beautiful. It's placid. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about idle women, and before I'm lambasted by my female viewers for being misogynist, I certainly am not, please bear with me and let me explain about the idle women. Most of you will have heard of, or a lot of you will have heard of the land girls who tended to the farms and agriculture of the UK during the Second World War, and the idle women were their equivalent on the canals to some extent. By 1943, a lot of the boating male population had obviously gone off to war, and it was a bit of a struggle keeping the supplies going. So it was decided to enlist some women, and these women came from all sorts of different backgrounds. There were debutantes and soon-to-be duchesses. There were teachers. There were sort of 18-year-old girls who had been bombed out of the East End of London, and in total, I think there were about 45 of them operating, mostly along the Grand Union Canal between 1943 and 1946. I think this is a really fascinating story. I mean, these idle women, so-called because they had badges on that had IW for inland waterways. These so-called idle women would work in teams of 3 on a 72-foot narrowboat going from London to Birmingham and then back again via Coventry. And they would work 18 to 20-hour days, and this was for 3 weeks without a break. And you can imagine how much hard work and how grueling that must have been. Absolutely extraordinary. So to call them idle women was probably a bit of 1940s irony, I think. So once trained up, and the trainer was a ballet dancer of all things, which I find totally extraordinary. Well, once trained up, these so-called idle women would take a 50-ton cargo, usually steel, but sometimes grain and other things besides, sometimes munitions, from London to Birmingham on the Grand Union Canal. Now, this was a round trip of about 3 weeks, which, as I say, they did non-stop between 18 and 20 hours a day. Now, obviously, they didn't really want to be stuck in London docklands overnight because of the bombing raids. And I suppose the same could be said about being in Coventry and also being in Birmingham. But also, you know, if they're working 18 to 20 hours a day, and even through the winter, a lot of that is going to be in darkness. And of course, what with the blackout, they weren't allowed to use torches, so they were, you know, in their 72-foot narrowboat, towing another 72-foot Butty, which is basically an unpowered narrowboat, and you know, going through all those locks on the way up to Birmingham in the pitch black, which is extraordinary, and must have been quite dangerous actually. One of the boats they worked on was called Tench, and quite strangely enough, as I was leaving Stone about a week after I'd discovered this story, I saw Tench moored up. Now I wondered if it could possibly be the same boat, and having done a little bit of research on it, it was indeed the same boat, which was built in 1937, so absolutely brilliant that it's still running today. And apparently it's been taken round, well, it's been on the Grand Union Canal certainly, with an actress and a poet doing some work about the idle women. So yeah, please look it up. It's a fascinating story. I've been talking about idle women this morning. Can I just film your boat? That's an extraordinary coincidence.
After a 90-degree bend, we crossed the narrow aqueduct channel over the River Sow. There was quite a queue at Tixall Lock, 2 coming up and 5 of us going down. The lock is always a good place for a bit of banter and friendly chat. We are now skirting to the west and the north of Cannock Chase, a designated area of outstanding natural beauty. Back in 1991, I was shortlisted to teach photography at Wolverhampton College of Art, and if offered the job, it was my intention to live in Cannock Chase. Makes me wonder how very different my life would have been. Was it fate, destiny, or pure chance? Here I am, entering Tixall wide water, tonight's mooring. Remote, peaceful, and beautiful. Well, here I am back on Tixall Wide, which I have to say is one of my favourite mooring spots. It's just beautiful. Wide open water, beautiful buildings. What could be better? Absolutely fantastic. And I have to say how extraordinary it was to come across, quite by coincidence, the boat Tench. That was just, well, that caps off the story brilliantly, doesn't it? Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time. I'll put links to the idle women in the description box below. And please watch the video showing Tench towing the Butty Ilford, a fascinating insight into how the idle women would have worked the boats.